Hello everybody, MegazardX here, back at it again to give y'all another very exciting video. And for this week's video, figured we might as well go with an old classic and an old true. There's not a ton of stuff going down, at least within the gaming news sphere, that I really wanted to talk about. So I figured I'd have a little bit of fun with this week's episode, kind of like how I did with last week's episode with me challenging Steven and stuff in terms of Nintendo World Championship. So for today's video, I'm going to be going through and tier ranking every single Nintendo console that they have ever released, or at least like 98% of them, though. I'll mention about the couple exceptions when I actually bring up the list here in just a moment, though. But that's what we're going to be going through and talking about within this one video right here, though. So if you really like this video, make sure to go ahead and hit that like button, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight up into this video. All right, so here in front of me, I managed to have all of the different consoles, both handheld as well as home consoles that Nintendo has ever released. Yes, even some that's almost literally right below me, right down here in this bottom right corner, though. That's blocked a little bit, but we'll see it as we kind of go further along in this video, though. But yeah, I'm just gonna go through here, just rank them, just kind of give my overall thoughts and takes on every single system that's here. In terms of like, and I'll be ranking them based upon the system itself, like how it feels with the controllers and stuff, and then also some of the software that goes with it, and then just the times and stuff. It'll just be a plethora of different things that are just going to be associated with a home console or just a handheld that Nintendo was releasing for that given year, though. So here we go. So we're going to kick things off with the Game and Watch. The Game and Watch wasn't one of those systems that I actually grew up playing with, but I did manage to get a couple of the anniversary ones with the Mario 35th one, as well as the Legend of Zelda one. And those had a different games ranging from like the original Mario Brothers with one, and I think Lost Levels was with one, and then also with the Legend of Zelda one where it's like had Zelda 1, I think it had Zelda 2 and Link's Awakening, but like like the original one. So I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool though. But yeah, it's kind of nice to be able to have something that actually track your time and be able to play some of these basic old Game and Watch games. Is kind of how Mr. Game and Watch was introduced into Smash Brothers. So nothing too fancy, but it's just kind of some basic old stuff though. Obviously, those examples of Game and Watches that I mentioned earlier, they're way better than the original ones. Whereas with these ones, it's just like a simple ball game, moving them left and right, him probably catching something. And the list kind of goes on and on. You had like different variants for different versions of that game though, but overall I wouldn't say it's like the most craziest out there system though, but that was definitely Nintendo early in its time. So I'm just gonna drop it at the bottom of D. I don't think anybody would jump on my back for that. All right, then we move over here to the actual NES, and this is where I think Nintendo started clicking on all cylinders. I mean, at least at the time when this system was out, like obviously you had all of the first party games that it was known from, everything from like Mario Brothers, iconically Mario Brothers 3. You had the Legend of Zelda and stuff like that. Zelda 2 wasn't too hot. You had Kid Icarus Uprising, Ice Climber stuff, some games that some people hit or miss kind of like or kind of dislike depending on your own taste and stuff. Like OG Metroid and stuff, Kirby, like the list goes on and on for all those first party games though. And a lot of those games that Nintendo introduced in the system are still running up into this day in terms of their overall franchise and how many games they've been getting though. But at least in terms of third parties, I mean, Nintendo had a cornerstone on the market though. So if you happened to grow up on the NES, there wasn't really like a ton of competition for it. There was a couple of things though, but like rarely anybody ever really mentions it unless you're just deep within retro gaming itself though. So for all those sakes and purposes, I still feel like, some of these games, they aged okay, some of them not so much. So I'm kind of torn whether I want to put in C or B. I'll stay a little reserved on it though. There's some great games on this system, but then again, some of them, they hadn't aged like fine wine. So I'm just going to leave it in the middle. We're just going to keep it at a toasty C. All right, so next up, we have the OG Game Boy. Now, when you think about the Game Boy, a couple of games might come to mind, and I think one of the most iconic ones is obviously Pokemon. I feel like that's the one thing that a lot of people probably associate with an original Game Boy. So you think about Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, or Green if you're over there in Japan, and then Gold, Silver, Crystal. Like, I think that was the one game that was pushing this system heavily. hard. Like I'm pretty sure at the time, if you had a Game Boy, more than likely not, especially during these early Pokemon craze where Pokemon was getting the TCG and then it was getting the anime and stuff. More than likely, if you had this system, you probably had a Pokemon game though. Like you couldn't go wrong with that game. And then obviously you had some other things as well, like what was it, like Donkey Kong 94, as well as like Super Mario Land and Super Mario Land 2 to 6 golden coins. I would say 6 golden coins was definitely up there in terms of like the best Game Boy games outside of some of those Pokemon games though. So for those reasons alone, I probably would definitely put that up there in the B tier though. And I did mention Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal, those were technically on the Game Boy Color side of things though. But while we're on Game Boy Color now though, I definitely say it's obviously better than that, because the original Game Boy was black and white. Game Boy Color added the implication of color and stuff though. So yeah, so I think it was definitely a step up. So I do put it, one step above the Game Boy. So I still, put both of them in the B tier though. All right, then you come over here to the Super Nintendo. No, now the Super Nintendo, that's a system right there. You introduce all of these other, wide variety of games, and this is like leagues over the original, NES though. So you're going from 8-bit up to 16-bit though. You had games such as Super Metroid, Yoshi's Island, Super Mario World, and stuff. Like the list kind of goes on and on and on. Secret of Mana and stuff. Like you started getting a lot of good RPGs up on here. Chrono Trigger, like the list goes on, and a lot of that Super Nintendo library still holds up to this day. Like you can still go back and pull up games such as A Link to the Past and stuff, and it still holds its value and weight, I would dare say, in gold though. So not a hard decision for this one though, but I'll definitely put it up there in S tier. I didn't necessarily own that console growing up though, but I did manage to play a lot of those games via Virtual Console or NSO. So yes, I understand a lot of the love that the Super Nintendo still gets to this day. Then you had the Virtual Boy over here. Let's keep it a buck 50, all right here. I mean, Nintendo's trying to get ahead of the times, even way before like VR started to really become a thing. Like now when you look at the PlayStation VR 1 and the VR 2 that was associated with the PS4, PS5 and stuff, like Nintendo was trying to get way ahead of the game up on this thing though. But I don't think it really did anything. Like the most iconic game is like that one Wario game that was up on the system though, and outside of that, it just kind of flopped for Nintendo, so it wasn't really doing any favors though. So for the attempt, I will put it I'll put it a step above D, or right above the Game and Watch and stuff though. I'll give them a little bonus points for the attempt though. I don't think it was necessarily trash, but I mean it was just ahead of its time. And then you had the Nintendo 64. This was the multiplayer system right here. The first home console from Nintendo that managed to include up to 4 players. It had games such as Super Smash Brothers or Wave Race and such. I mean, and obviously the list goes on and on and on. Obviously, if you're thinking about a third-party game, GoldenEye and stuff, it was just a great multiplayer system that you can just play with the boys. Rent out certain games from your local Blockbuster at the day, back in the day, and just have a fun time. Get a bunch of pizza boxes and stuff, and you'd be ready and set for the sleepover though. The Mario Party series started off on this thing. Mario Party 1, 2, and 3. I just love this thing. Obviously the controller, like if you have some more modern day people that were introduced probably from like the Wii generation onward, some people might look at this Nintendo 64 controller and be like, what the heck are you supposed to do with this thing? No. However, you grew up, you know how it functions, it's okay. It just has 3 prongs. There's nothing wrong with it though, but I will still put that up in S tier. Whether or not I put it above or below the Super Nintendo, it's my tier list. I'm gonna flip it around though. I'm just gonna leave it like that. I'm just gonna say it as it is. Both of those systems are phenomenal. All right, then we roll over here to the Game Boy Advance. Now the Game Boy Advance, obviously it has some great games. Some things that come to mind, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, that's where the Mario and Luigi series started off at. You have games such as that. Obviously you have some of the Mario Kart ones. I don't really like the Mario Kart one on the GBA as well though. I do like the handheld form factor. I have a lot of fond memories and stuff of just walking around with the GBA. Particularly the one I grew up with was the GBA SP, which was the one that you were able to recharge and stuff, versus the original GBA where it's just like, hey, this runs off of batteries though. But I do like the library on there. Metroid Zero Mission. You have Fusion up on there as well. So I do like the form factor, and this one did basically everything that the Game Boy and Game Boy Color was able to do. It's backwards compatible with those games, along with a slew of other games though. So, for all those sakes and reasons, I put it as a solid A. But then when I compare it to, the Game Boy Advance SP, because it could charge and it had a clamshell version, so that way, it kind of protected the screen, I'll put it one step above that. So overall, I really do love the GBA. You definitely have games such as Fire Red, Leaf Green, Pokemon, Emerald, and stuff. Great games that come to mind with that system, though. So I had to put it up there in A. Next, you have the GameCube. Let me just go ahead and slide this puppy on up there, though, because like we know this sucker is absolutely S tier. There's a lot of games that were actually introduced within this one console's life, such as like the Pikmin series and such, that that still live on even up into this day. Like now we have Pikmin 4 on the Nintendo Switch, though. I mean, there's a lot of cool accessories that they managed to do up on this system, and I think one of my personal favorites on the GameCube is none other than Mario Kart Double Dash. And gosh, by golly, now that's a game right there, and I definitely will say that's like one of my top 3 favorite Mario Kart games, though. But yeah, there's a lot of cool things you were able to do with this. You had obviously the save slots and such. You had the Game Boy Advance player that you're able to slap on the bottom, so you're able to play from Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance on your big I was about to say flat screen TV, but at the time people were still having like box TVs, though. But you're actually able to play it on the big television versus just having it, just walking around handheld as well, though. So a lot of great things about the GameCube. I do love the controller as well. I think that's still an iconic controller, and one of the reasons why it just established the standard in terms of like the dual analog sticks as well as like asymmetrical stuff. That was all set up with the GameCube onward, and everybody else has kind of ran with it, though. So a lot of good stuff with the GameCube. All right, we're going to keep this list going on Nintendo DS. Now, the DS, I have a lot of fond memories with this. Obviously, some things that come to mind is like Pokemon Diamond, Pearl Platinum, Black and White 2, such like that. You had the Mario Kart DS series up on there as well, Metroid Prime Hunters, and the list kind of goes on and on and on, though. Like New Super Mario Brothers, fantastic, especially when you do like some of the multiplayer stuff, the DS wireless play. And then obviously, this is like one of the first systems from Nintendo that actually had the Nintendo Wi-Fi connection, the way how they branded it, where you're actually able to play with people, not just locally and not just wirelessly. Like, the GBA had like those wireless adapters. No, while the DS had it built in, you also can connect up on the internet and play with people from, halfway across the world. That was just a freaking amazing concept. There's a reason why this is like slightly below the PS2. I'm definitely going to put the DS up in S tier. I'll probably leave it right there for now, though. I think that's where it comfortably stands right now. Then obviously, then you have all these other iterations of the DS. Like you had the DS, the DS Lite, and stuff. Now this is where things starts to shift around a little bit in terms of the thing. Now, technically, the DS Lite is better in terms of like just the form factor than the original DS. But then the DSi, and by extension DSi XL, because you had the DSi Shop, technically will put it up there. So I'll say both of those are good. But then I'll slide the fat original DS down to probably bottom of A. That thing is just so bulky and stuff. I just don't like the form factor, though. So overall, the general consensus, I say DS is S tier. But then when you start moving around the models and stuff, I think that's the way how the list is going to line out from here. All right, then next up you had the Nintendo Wii. Now, the Nintendo Wii, it's hard to believe that this system is technically considered retro at this given point, though. Because when you look at the Nintendo Wii, there's a lot of cool things that come to mind. First thing and foremost, the game that came with nearly every single Wii that was sold, Mario. Oh, I was about to say Mario. Wii Sports. Like literally everybody and their mama had this game. It was the one game that you could pick up and play with anybody else, with any other person that had the Wii. Remember, the Wii was so crazy around that era, around 2007. It was so hard for people to be able to pick up that system and be able to play it with, all these other people that might actually have it. Like, I remember me personally, like my family had one, my aunt and her family had some, and then my uncle and his family had a Wii as well. So anytime we were at each other's houses and stuff, we were trying to face each other off in like a little bit of tennis and bowling. I think those were like the 2 sports that everybody took personally pretty hard, though. But yeah, you had obviously some great games such as Donkey Kong Country Returns. Obviously you had Super Mario Brothers Wii up on that mess, so you're actually able to play a 2D Mario game with up to four people at the same time, which was like a series first and stuff. You had some other good iconic RPGs up on there, like the Xenoblade Chronicles series got to start on the Wii system though. So a lot of great games and stuff. And while yes, some people weren't akin to the motion controls and stuff, like with Skyward Sword, Legends of the Skyward Sword, I really love the heck out of that game though. And it's still definitely one of my most favorite Legend of Zelda games to this date, though, the original Wii version, though. So, for all those sakes and purposes, and it's backwards compatible with the GameCube, I definitely would say it's up in S tier, but where I will put it, I might leave it right in the middle, though. Yeah, so I think overall it's just really good. I'll just leave it in the middle of S tier. There's a lot of S tiers up on this thing, though. Nintendo made some good consoles back in the day, though. But yeah, all right, so you might be thinking, well, why in the world we're talking about the other Wii variants now? Like, there's two of them that look the same, and then you got this one that's like a black and red Wii. That first one I put up here had all the bells and whistles. That was the original launch model. This one right here, the one that's standing up kind of a little bit right here, this one's the one without the GameCube support. So the ports and stuff is lost. For that reason alone, I definitely will put it probably at the bottom of B. I'll just leave it there because like you stripped away a lot of good stuff with the GameCube aspects and stuff. I was like, wait, why are you gonna do that? And then obviously then you had the Wii Mini. The Wii Mini took away the GameCube stuff on top of online. I was like, hold on, where were we back into the 80s where there was like none? No, we're putting that at the bottom of C though. So overall, the Wii in general, if you had that launch model, I'll say it's middle S, but when you start stripping away those features, that kind of puts it down a little bit lower though. All right, now we got the Nintendo 3DS. Now this right here is probably the most peak of all handhelds that Nintendo has ever managed to drop though. However, it did manage to sell as many as the original Nintendo DS era family of systems though. However, for the power that it did have, and it still had the two dual screens and stuff, it's really cool. Now they tried to have that extra gimmick added on there with the 3D, but even from what we saw with the family of 3DS systems as the generation went on, they stripped away the 3D aspect though. So I was like, it wasn't the craziest or the best gimmick in comparison to the original DS that just included the dual screen stuff. Does make it a little bit hard to actually, port some games over to future consoles like the Nintendo Switch though. But nonetheless though, you had great games such as like Kid Icarus Uprising or Samus Returns up on this mess though. Like great, phenomenal experiences that use both the screens and with all the power up in it though. It was just nice to be able to play these games on the go though. You even somehow managed to have Super Smash Brothers on the 3DS, be able to run and function up on this thing though. So for all those reasons, I would put it. I wanted to almost put it in an S, but I'm actually just gonna leave it right here in the middle of A. Now let's go through all the different variants for the 3DS though, because obviously the next one you had was 3DS XL. Technically that would be placed right above the original 3DS. It's just bigger. It just makes sense. But then you had the new Nintendo 3DS/3DS XL. We're gonna include both of them in the same ballpark. The new Nintendo 3DS/XL, that just allowed us to play even more games than what we were able to on the original 3DS. So this included games such as like Xenoblade Chronicles 3D, where you were only able to play it on there. So, for that reason alone, hey, I gotta put it right above that. And then also allowed you to play Super Nintendo games as well, because you just had, a little bit more power behind it to actually do some things behind the scene though. So that's really cool. Then you get a little weird and you get a little bit funky, because then you go into the 2DS and the 2DS XL. The 2DS was nice because it sold for $80 MSRP. My brother had one of those things. It was just a nice budget entry to be able to get into the 3DS library of systems. Like it even came with Mario Kart 7, which was a great game on the 3DS. But that form factor, I can't stand behind it though. So I'm gonna put it at the top of B. And then you had the 2DS XL, which I think did everything right in terms of the new features from the new. I hate it when Nintendo calls the thing quote unquote new. But anyway, the new features that were added up in there and the bigger size and stuff. So I will actually put that at the top because I don't value the 3D much over just playing the games in 2D anyway though, because even when you turn that slider up, it actually knocks the power down of the game overall, because it's processing like two different screens to give you that 3D effect and stuff. It even knocks that down though. So in terms of the 3DS XL, I'll leave all of that there. So I think I balanced all of that out quite well. Now we had the Nintendo Wii U. Now, for the Wii U, for all sex and purposes, yes, we know the thing was a commercial flop, barely selling about like 12, 13 million or something like that, though. But it did give way for this idea that you're able to play on the screen a little bit away from your home console, but it wasn't too far away though. The Wii U crawls so the Switch could run. That's kind of the whole mindset with the Wii U. You had some games on there such as like 3D World and such. Nintendo Land, I think that's like the iconic one, at least for me personally, that I always refer back to Super Mario Bros. U. And the list kind of goes on and on and on, like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, which I will still argue is like one of the best platformers I have ever played, period, though. And a lot of these other Wii U games, they did manage to get ported over to the Switch. We still don't have Wind Waker or Twilight Princess, surprisingly. And at this point in the game, it might not happen until like maybe Switch 2, if we're lucky at that, though. But overall, it's not a bad system if you grew up having one, though. But some of them droughts, it just kind of killed it for me, though. Oh, shoot. I definitely would put it. Ooh. I mean, I still like the games we had on the Wii U, so I'll probably put it at the top of C in comparison to like the original NES and such. But that's where I probably will place it. Now we're down to the final bit where it's just the Nintendo Switch consoles that are just left though. And overall, with the Nintendo Switch, obviously that's the current console we're at right now. There's a reason why this thing is in the running for potentially beating the PS2 and being one of the highest selling systems of all time because Nintendo merging together their handheld as well as their home console units and just combining it all together though. It's the major play on Nintendo and literally took some of the best elements from the Nintendo Wii U and just went the extra mile with it though. And being able to play it in tabletop, handheld, or even docking on a TV, it just suits so many different gamers depending on what's kind of going on in their lives. And then you have an amazing library because you had both the handheld and the home console divisions merged all into one. Like literally almost every single year except for maybe the COVID year, I felt like we had at a bare minimum 6 major first party games coming out every single year. It's like you barely could go 2 months and there wouldn't be some kind of a first party game released now, whether it's something that's big as Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, or maybe something that's a little bit smaller or something like a little bit niche, like the inclusion like ARMS and stuff. And he had some really good shooters with like Splatoon 2, Splatoon 3 and such, or you had some new IP such as like Astro Changer and or experimental stuff with Labo. Like the list kind of goes on and on, like Ring Fit and such. Like man, the Nintendo Switch has all this killer software. That's just first party wise. And then obviously you have all these other third party games as well and being able to play them on the go and on your big TV. The Switch is just so versatile. It's just great. So for all those reasons, I definitely will put the system at the top of S. I think it just beats out the library of the GameCube at that point in the game. And overall, it's just a great, phenomenal experience that I've been growing up with, though. Now, in terms of other variants like the Switch Lite, obviously you lose the docking feature a little bit, so I will put that probably maybe right below the GBA because the GBA games or the GBA systems, you do have like a decent form factor, especially that original one. So I'll just slip it in kind of in the middle of A. But then the OLED is technically better than the original Switch because of the increased battery life and stuff, the better screen and such. So I'll put that one step above the baseline Switch model. All right, and there you have it. I'm looking at the list right now, and honestly, that looks like a pretty great, solid list for me, though. So overall, if we were just looking at just like the S ranking tiers right there, you got the Switch, you had the GameCube, the N64, the Super Nintendo, the Wii, and the DS. And then you roll down to the A, then you have like the Game Boy Advance and stuff. That's where the 3DS happens to fall as well. And then you have the other few consoles that are down there. Notice how I didn't put any of those consoles down in the F tier because I don't think anything Nintendo put out was just absolutely forbiddingly terrible. The closest thing was probably technically, well, the way how I got it should have been the Game & Watch, but I mean, that was way before its time, though, in terms of like, what Nintendo wanted to do with handheld and home console stuff. But the closest thing might have been the Virtual Boy, though. But I mean, some of the games on there, it's still pretty unique. So I was like, I just didn't have the heart in me to drop it down into F tier. So overall, I would say with all of the home Nintendo consoles as well as the handheld Nintendo consoles that Nintendo has made throughout these years, all the way back from the 80s all the way where we're currently at right now, Nintendo definitely made some bangers. Obviously, some of them were heavy hits like the Wii, the DS, the Switch that managed to sell high in the hundreds of millions, though. But then you had some other systems along the way, like the 64, or even, no, definitely the Virtual Boy and the Wii U and stuff. Things that didn't sell nearly as much in comparison to some of those other systems, though. But I'd say that each one of these game systems, handheld, home console, everything else in between, there's a lot of charm to a lot of these different systems. Now, I noticed I didn't put some things on the list because I did pull this from tier ranking thing, such as like the Game Boy Micro. Thing is too stupidly small for anybody's hands. I don't care if you really love the heck out of that mess, though. Like, you should have had at least a general GBA size console or even a Game Boy SP, because I don't know how anybody had the small enough hand. You must have been a baby or something playing that. I'm just saying, though. But overall, Nintendo has made some really good systems throughout the years. Some of them more successful than others, though. But I think to each one of these systems, they definitely have its charm in terms of like just the form factor, the way how you're able to play it in different environments, as well as all of the software to boot that's strongly associated within each one of these handheld and home console games. But y'all gotta let me know down in the comment section down below, what all have you thought about this whole entire tier list I have? Or, were there some things that you were agreeing with me on, or were there some things that you were kind of feeling mixed on, or something like that? Or would you rather put something higher versus me putting something down lower? But I think for the general consensus, I feel like I touched everything that most people would say about most of these consoles. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I did miss a couple of things though. But y'all just gotta let me know in the comments. But that's gonna basically do it in terms of today's video. So if you really like this, make sure you're gonna hit that like button. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. So remember, y'all, until whatever video I make next, see y'all.